Welcome, each and every one of you, to another exciting episode of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And you are listening to us on Home of Southern Sports, WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key. We are also on Facebook Live, YouTube Live. Go and like the Facebook page and subscribe to the YouTube channel. This is episode 712, just in case you're keeping score at home. We have got a huge show for you today as the entertainment world and the sports world finally collide. And this is going to be a big show. This is the reason why I got into sports broadcasting. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are dating. Yes, I am starting the show with that. And it is fascinating because now we can talk about the entertainment world and the sports world as well. Hey, Usher is going to be at the Super Bowl halftime show in 2024. I immediately went on Twitter and said, hey, why not? It's the 20th anniversary of one of the greatest dance songs of all time. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Hey, we've got a jam-packed show. I am going to talk about high school football. I'm going to talk about the weekend. I'm going to talk about everything that was going on. And then I'm going to get into my thoughts on college football and everything that happened over the weekend and the NFL. Boy, the Falcons offense. Where are they? They're asleep for some reason. I don't know. They're not woken up. Anyway, let's go ahead and get right into the show. I'm also going to mention where the Braves stand right now when it comes to the postseason with a week left to go in the Major League Baseball season. How are the Braves looking as they get ready for postseason baseball? Let's go ahead and get the show started as I'm moving the camera a little bit. Okay, I had a busy week. Just got back from the CB Hoops Perfect Practice Fall League. Oh, that has been so much fun. Thrift Behringer and I have been calling it on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. The final game was Central taking on Carver. You had Jacoby Hill for Central taking on Tony Montgomery of Carver. It was incredible. Tony Montgomery did have 27 points, but Central did win. And there's three teams that are still 3-0 in this fall league: Auburn, Pacelli, and Central. And we'll have some more weeks to go, and it's going to be a great time. Over the weekend, we had high school game day at Pacelli. I'm going to go ahead and air that later on in the show, as the celebrity guest picker was Dave Plata, along with the AD of Pacelli, Coach Corey Black. It was a fun time. He put on the mascot helmet, and I got to shadow just a great broadcast on Viking Live as we simulcast it on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. It was Pacelli and Gatewood. It was homecoming. Dave Plata and Thrift Behringer were on the call, and I was just very blessed just to be a part of it. And I just love great football games, and that atmosphere, you can't beat that at Pacelli. And then on Saturday, I used my press pass, and I was on the sidelines for just about 10 minutes, because I had a busy Saturday. For Carver and Hapeville Charter, it was a tough loss for the Carver Tigers. They lose 3 straight, but I was pumped on the sidelines, hearing Damian the Nighthawk Daniels coaching up that secondary, and I got to feel and hear the sounds of the game all the way on the sideline. There was a big pass that Hapeville Charter threw to the wide receiver, and I was just feet away from it. And this is why I love being a reporter and being somebody that covers high school football in the Chattahoochee Valley. Got to talk to the photographer at the Ledger Inquirer, and he put a little bug in my ear that the Ledger Inquirer is looking for a sports writer. I am a sports writer for the Chattahoochee Valley Living. Look, the Ledger Inquirer, that brings it to another level. That's a daily newspaper. Yes, I love sports writing. That is something that I definitely would be interested down the road when I do have time. But yeah, I got to talk to the photographer for the Ledger Inquirer. And also WRBL's Jack Patterson was right there on the sideline with me as well, getting the highlights for the evening news that Tyler Redmond was producing and anchoring later that evening. And it's so much action that happened on Friday night. The biggest surprise, Stars Mill upset Troup County. Troup County did not have Teo Todd in that game. I'm going to go ahead and recap all the scores And then on Tuesday's show that I do with Thrift Behringer, we are going to take a deep dive into all the games that happened on Friday night. Starting down at Otis Spencer Stadium, Mary Persons gets the 55-0 victory over Columbus. At Kinnett Stadium, Shaw evens their record to 3-3 by beating the Jordan Red Jackets 42-6. Brookstone gets a huge win on the road against Stratford Academy. You had Spencer getting the road victory over Rutland. They are now 3-2. You have Callaway. They were able to get the 38-6 victory over Redan. Heritage defeats Calvary Christian. Calvary falls to 3-3. Peach County defeats the Hardaway Hawks. Hardaway falls to 0-6 as they start region play. In an offensive shootout, Wetumpka defeats Russell County 52-36. And then you have Auburn defeating Percy Julian 48-13. Opelika defeats Prattville 38-13. This shocked me. In fact, I'm going to have Philip Jordan on in a couple of weeks. Dothan defeated Smith Station 66-0 as they get ready for their showdown with Central on October the 6th. Pike Road defeats Eufaula 48-30. Charles Henderson, the runners-up from 5A last season, defeated Beauregard 27-0. Manchester gets the big victory over Chatco 46-0. Marion County, they defeat Greenville 24-21 in the battle of the two top teams in Class 1 Division 2. Schley County defeats Macon County 34-7. Taylor County is 3-1. How about those Taylor County Vikings? They defeated Central Talbotton 56-6. A border war between Talbot County and Taylor County, just over to the east of Muskogee County. Reeltown defeats Barber County 47-6. Laverne defeats Lynette 18-6. Chambers Academy is 5-1. 5 straight victories for the Chambers Academy Rebels as they defeat Bessemer Academy 45-10. Lee Scott Academy gets a bounce-back win, defeating Macon East 56-7. Now let's go over to some of the schools in Noonan as Lambert defeats East Coweta 23-22, giving the East Coweta Indians their first loss of the season. Sandy Creek, they defeat Jackson 56-14 as they get ready for their big showdown down in Hamilton, Georgia against the Harris County Tigers. Northgate, they defeat Veterans 35-14. They're now 4-2. And then a border war. This was the high school game of the week for WTVM. Flint River still undefeated as they shut out Lakeside School 40-0. That was all the high school football action in the Chattahoochee Valley. And I'm really excited about the games that are happening next week. There's only one Thursday night game. It's going to be in Riverdale, Georgia. The LaGrange Grangers, as they defeat Whitewater on Thursday night, 35-0. They are 3-2. They're taking on the winless Riverdale team. You have Jordan taking on Spencer, Carver at Columbus. You have Sandy Creek taking on Harris County. That is going to be the high school showcase game as Thrift Behringer and Rick Beach are going to be in Hamilton, Georgia for that massive showdown between the Sandy Creek Patriots 5-1, the Harris County Tigers who are 4-1. Brookstone is on the road taking on Whitfield Academy. Kendrick is on the road taking on Ace Charter. Kendrick was able to get their second victory of the season on Thursday night. Troup County, trying to bounce back after that loss to Stars Mill, is taking on North Clayton. Schley County is taking on Chatco. Columbia taking on Callaway. Shaw is taking on the Syrup Makers of Cairo. Columbia, I talked about Columbia taking on Callaway. Manchester is taking on Macon County, the battle of two 4-1 teams. You have Lynette taking on Hanley on the road. Pell City taking on Eufaula. Opelika is on the road taking on the 6A champions, Theodore, and or the runners-up. Theodore was the runners-up to Saraland in 6A. Pike Liberal Arts, remember they won the AISA playoff game against Glenwood a couple of years ago. They went up to the AHSAA and they are taking on Notasulga. I will be at the county, Seal, Alabama. I make my return to Russell County, as the other showcase game is going to be Valley at Russell County, and I will be there Friday night at Corvette Stadium at Mitchell Field. It's going to be a nice reunion, seeing a lot of familiar faces. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody there, and I'm excited about being on the call. Dadeville is taking on Barber County. Auburn is on the road in Birmingham, taking on the 5A champions, Ramsey. Prattville Christian is taking on the Beulah Bobcats. Benjamin Russell is taking on Smith Station, and Valiant Cross taking on Glenwood. Lee Scott Academy is taking on Ottaughville Academy. Don't forget that Monday at Mike and Ed's Barbecue, it is the Glenwood Gators Coaches Show. Fresh off a bye, we did not have a show last week. We are going to have a show this week, recapping the game against Lee Scott Academy and previewing Valiant Cross Academy. Should be a lot of fun. So I wrapped up my high school football in about 10 minutes because I wanted to make sure to get all that stuff in there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have my thoughts on college football. There was a lot of great college football games. The game of the day was the game at night, Notre Dame and Ohio State. This was just a heavyweight battle between two great teams, and I don't think because Notre Dame lost that's going to affect anything. I think this is a quality loss for Notre Dame. I didn't like how it ended, where they only had 10 men on the field when Ohio State punched it in. Notre Dame had their chances to win this game. They stopped Ohio State on a 4th down, and they gave the ball back to Ohio State. But Kyle McCord, in that hostile environment as a freshman, was able to get the game-winning drive. And Ohio State, statement win. This was a win they had to have. I think that Coach Ryan Day would have been on the hot seat if Ohio State would have lost this game. I still think Notre Dame's going to be fine. By the way, they play Duke next week. That is going to be a massive game, especially with Riley Leonard and what Duke has been doing, undefeated. And I love the quarterback battle. I'll talk about that later in the week. So my thoughts on Auburn. They started the noon kickoff, taking on Texas A&M. And what I thought about Auburn taking on Texas A&M is that they are still a team that's rebuilding. Texas A&M's Max Johnson threw for 2 touchdowns. I mean, Auburn didn't expect that. And they thought that Connor Wegman was going to be playing in this game. And even though it is Auburn's first loss of the season as they get ready for Georgia this week, that's the 3:30 CBS game in Auburn. That's going to be a great game as well. I was very impressed with Auburn just sticking around. They did lose the game 27-10, but their defense is pretty decent. They just got to find ways to get their offense going. Peyton Thorne only threw for 44 yards. That is not going to get it done. They only had 2 yards in the third quarter. And like I mentioned, they weren't expecting Max Johnson to throw 2 touchdown passes. So Auburn is now 3-1 on the season as they get ready for Georgia. Texas A&M, they're 3-1. I know they're going to have a big game against Alabama in a couple weeks, but who's going to be the starting quarterback? Is it going to be Connor Wegman or is it going to be Max Johnson? I thought Max Johnson looked pretty good. Texas A&M seemed to have the better players. Michigan taking on Rutgers. This was a tie game. Rutgers, in fact, took the lead. Greg Schiano is a pretty decent coach, but it was the return of Jim Harbaugh. And the Michigan Wolverines, they dominate 31-7. The new AP poll is out. And Michigan is the number 2 team in the country. By default, it's going to be Georgia and Michigan until they lose. I know that Florida State or Texas or Ohio State might have looked more impressive, but you know that the teams that were ranked number 1 and number 2, even though they're playing inferior opponents, they're going to still be number 1 and number 2 until they get knocked off. So with that being said, I want to talk about Ole Miss and Alabama because I watched this game. Even though Alabama won the game 24-10, I wasn't all that impressed with Alabama in that first half. In fact, I was more impressed with the Alabama defense stopping that Lane Kiffin offense and only giving up 10 points. Yes, Jackson Dart had that good drive, But Ole Miss just shot themselves in the foot. By missing that field goal, it would have put them up 10-6. And Alabama was able to get that big play. Jalen Milroe was capable of throwing the ball down the field. Jermaine Burton caught that pass. There was costly penalties. Bama was in the red zone 4 times in that first half. And they only came away with the 2 field goals. In fact, Jalen Milroe did throw the interception. He didn't have a perfect game, but Alabama did get the win. And that's all that matters. Look, say what you want about Alabama. Look, they are not the dominant offense they used to be in the last couple of years, but their defense is starting to play on another level. And I think that could be a championship defense, and they could shut down offenses like they did against Lane Kiffin in that Ole Miss offense. I want to talk about Oregon and Colorado because this game was so hyped. I wanted to double screen it. I wanted to watch Alabama and Ole Miss on the TV. I wanted to watch Oregon and Colorado on the tablet. Well, Colorado did not show up for this game. In fact, I heard chatter on social media that the Colorado players were disrespecting Oregon by stomping on the 50-yard line of the logo. Oregon was out for blood. Coach Dan Lanning, with his pregame speech, his halftime speech, he wanted to prove a point, and Oregon ran up the score on Colorado. But Colorado does not have the players that Oregon has. I kind of saw this coming. Yes, I'm a believer in Coach Prime and what he's doing at Colorado. I'm a believer in some of the players that he brought over from the transfer portal. But Oregon is just a better team. Bo Nix is a 6-year starter. He's been playing since 2019. And he has a lot of experience. And Oregon was just the better team. Colorado's going to have their hands full against USC next week. I know it's in Boulder. But without Travis Hunter, without that playmaker on offense and on defense, I don't think Colorado stands a chance. And did you see all the criticism that Coach Prime got on social media? And Shedeur Sanders, his Heisman stock took a nosedive. Everybody is jumping off the bandwagon for Colorado. I still think Colorado has a bright future. They might even win 4 or 5 games, possibly even 6, and get to a bowl game. That is still not out of the question. I just think that this game was so hyped, and people thought, oh, Colorado was a 21-point underdog. They were so disrespected. No, the line of Vegas knew exactly what they were doing because Oregon is the better football team. Clemson, oh man, Clemson. Losing the game to Florida State. They could have won this game. Florida State survives. That's what it is about. Being a ranked team, a top 5 team, and you're playing a team that's unranked on the road, you're going to have games like this. Clemson should have won this game. This kicker missed the kick, and Clemson also had costly penalties. And the Clemson Tigers find themselves at 2 losses, and it's not even the end of September yet. They have 2 ACC losses, Duke and Florida State. So you could kiss the ACC championship goodbye. You could probably kiss a major bowl, a New Year's Six bowl game goodbye. I think it's safe to say the Clemson dynasty is over unless Coach Dabo Swinney adjusts with the times and embraces the transfer portal and embraces NIL. Clemson is going to go back to 8 wins, 9 wins, with the program that it was 20 years ago. That's the reality. I believe that the dynasty is over for Clemson. Hey, we do have a new AP poll out, and there is no surprise that Georgia is number 1, even though they, still, they did score a touchdown on their first drive. They did look good. They're playing an inferior UAB team. I just want to know, when did they finally get tested? They had a little scare against South Carolina, which, by the way, South Carolina did beat Mississippi State. So maybe South Carolina is better than we expected. And I was also impressed with Tennessee getting the win over UTSA. But Georgia is the number one, 55% of the votes, followed by Michigan. Texas getting a big win over Baylor on the road. Ohio State, number 4. Florida State, number 5. Penn State, 6. Washington with Michael Penix Jr. is number 7. USC falls 3 points. And their defense, they got to fix that defense. I know they beat Arizona State, but they got to fix that defense. And then Oregon, number 9, and Utah, number 10, after getting a big win over UCLA. So those are all the undefeated teams, all the top 10. Got me thinking, what if, and this is a big what if, I know that Josh Pate likes to play the what if game. Big shout out to Josh Pate. He's got his Late Kick podcast that happened today. What if Michigan, Texas, Florida State, and USC all in the regular season undefeated? Just think about this. What if there's one loss for an SEC team? It could be LSU. Well, though if LSU only has one loss, they're undefeated in the conference. It could be Georgia, Alabama. What if there's one loss SEC team and the other teams that I mentioned are all undefeated? Who gets into the college football playoff? Well, the easy answer would be, well, the strength of schedule. Look at the strength of schedule. It's going to be a one-loss Georgia or a one-loss LSU or a one-loss Alabama, because a team like USC doesn't have a great strength of schedule. But I beg to differ, because the Pac-12, look at all the teams in the Pac-12 that are undefeated and that are in the top 25, like Washington State coming out of nowhere, Utah, USC, Washington, Oregon. So that's just my opinion. Right now, the Pac-12 is having the best season, but the SEC is still the best conference in college football. And this is coming from somebody that was born and raised in California. So there you go. Locally, college football, I want to talk about Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech actually got a huge, I'm talking huge win on the road against Wake Forest. And Haynes King, great quarterback, put up some big-time numbers, 30-16 over Wake Forest, as Haynes King had 2 touchdown passes, passed for 222 yards. Georgia Tech is now 2-2. And don't look now, but they host Bowling Green next week. They should end up winning that game to go to 3-2, possibly taking on an undefeated Miami team, getting ready down in Coral Gables. Is Georgia Tech back? Can they get to a bowl game? Can Brent Key, who's in his first year as the full-time head coach for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, can they get to a bowl game this year? I tell you what, if you really want to follow Georgia Tech football, go listen to Bryce Kuhn. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Kuhn, that's also on WQEE. Georgia Tech, he really knows everything about Georgia Tech football. I talk about Georgia Tech football here on the show, but I don't go into a deep dive like Bryce Kuhn does. Right, Mercer, they ended up getting the loss against Furman. Sad to see that happen. Yeah, LaGrange College, they lose to Huntington College 41-6. And Point University was on a bye. So that is the college football scores. I mean, if I miss a team, just write something in the comments. Just say you want me to talk about Miami getting a big win against Temple. I mean, you had Duke beating UConn. Oklahoma barely got by. They didn't score a whole lot of points against Cincinnati, but that defense played lights out. So there are still a lot of great teams, and I'll get into Week 5 later on this week in the show. But what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to go ahead and take a break. We're going to go pay some bills, and when we come back, I'm going to have my NFL wrap-up show, because what is going on with the Falcons? And then I'll talk about the Braves and where they stand when it comes to the MLB postseason. With a week left to go in Major League Baseball, we got postseason baseball in about a week. You don't want to go anywhere. It's Sports View with Richard Holdridge. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. You are listening to us on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key. By the way, if you want to hear some good talk, sports talk, I'm usually on with Ryan at Radio Penitentiary on Tuesday mornings, starting at 8:25. We just go for about a half an hour talking about sports. It's fascinating. It really is. And I am pleased to announce that he has invited me into the studio at WQEE on Friday, October the 6th. I'm going to be part of the morning show from 7 to 10. Ryan at Radio Penitentiary. I cannot wait. I love this radio station. I have been here at the radio station in January. It will be 2 years. Yes, I can't believe it's been 2 years. It will be 2 years. You know, I've been doing this podcast in January. It will be 4 years. There's just a lot happening. Hey, we got some NFL news. I'm not talking about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift dating. Yes, I kind of am. I started the show with that. I thought it was great, but be careful what you wish for. They were showing Taylor Swift in the press box with Travis Kelce's mother. I remember it was more than 10 years ago, Jessica Simpson with a pink Tony Romo jersey. I'm saying there was a reason why Jim Rome nicknamed Jessica Simpson Yoko Romo. Yes, it can be bad luck with some celebrities, but Taylor Swift, everything she touches turns to gold, and in my opinion, could be the greatest pop singer of all time. Yes, I'm putting her up there. She's on the Mount Rushmore of pop singers with Mariah Carey, Madonna, Whitney Houston, Taylor Swift. Yeah, I'm not much at talking about music news. If you want to listen to music news, there's another show that is on later on WQE. I'm talking late tonight. Anyway, let's get into the NFL news. What is going on with the Atlanta Falcons? My word, their offense stunk. It wasn't a testament on the Lions' defense. You only run Bijan Robinson 10 times? He rushed for 33 yards on 10 carries. Come on. And their offensive line, Desmond Ridder got sacked 7 times. Unbelievable. I mean, Kyle Pitts, yeah, he was targeted 5 times. What are you doing? Your identity is power running with the football with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. Use your strengths. I question the play calling by Arthur Smith. I really do. This is a team that they're supposed to figure it out in year 3. I don't want to see back-to-back 7 and 10 seasons. Arthur Smith's got to figure it out. Yeah, I know they were playing a good Lions team on the road. First of all, their defense is playing well enough to keep them in games. The offense should not be sputtering like this. Hey, Arthur Smith, you're an offensive coach. You need to figure out play calling. There, I said it. Falcons are a little bit of trouble. They do play the Jacksonville Jaguars in London, 9:30 in the morning next week. Look, it's just one loss, but I want to see progress. I want to see Desmond Ridder throw the ball down the field. I don't want to see Desmond Ridder get sacked 7 times. I want to see the Falcons run Bijan Robinson at least 25 times in a game. Anyway, that's just my rant on the Atlanta Falcons because I'm tired of seeing mediocre football. This team hasn't made the playoffs since 2017. We got excited because they're 2-0, and then they fall to a Lions team that they should have beat. The defense played well enough for them to win this game, and the offense no-showed to the party. But hey, at least they're not the Denver Broncos defense. I can't wrap my head around this. The Broncos defense gave up 70. Yes, that's not a misprint. 70 points to the Miami Dolphins. Are the Miami Dolphins the best team in football? This is the most points that an NFL team has scored since 1966. That's just a fun fact that I wanted to throw out there. But this Dolphins team is playing on another level. They've got weapons everywhere. They have got an incredible defense. Are the Dolphins the favorite to come out of the AFC and represent in the Super Bowl? Now, history tells you that the Dolphins, as a franchise, has had the worst luck, especially with quarterbacks, since Dan Marino retired in 1999. But Tua, there's something special about Tua Tagovailoa. As long as he is healthy, he can control this offense. And Mike McDaniel, he is a genius. I know that Kyle Shanahan misses him in San Francisco, but Mike McDaniel is going to be Coach of the Year. This is incredible. The ceiling for the Dolphins, there is no question where the Dolphins can take them, and they are playing on another level. Some of the other scores, I just want to run down some of the scores in the NFL. Boy, the Green Bay Packers come all the way back to defeat the Saints. I thought the Saints were going to go 3-0. And we still have an undefeated team in the NFC South. This is good news for the Falcons. Saints lose a game. They're 2-1 tied with the Falcons. The Buccaneers play the Eagles tonight. The Buccaneers could go to 2-1 because I think the Eagles are going to win that game. The Seahawks defeat the Panthers. Panthers haven't won a game. Big shocker, the Arizona Cardinals defeat the Dallas Cowboys 28-16. I cannot believe that the Cowboys defense gave up 28 points to the Cardinals and Josh Dobbs. Unheard of. The Kansas City Chiefs beat the Bears 41-10. I wasn't shocked with that score. The Texans beat the Jaguars in Jacksonville 37-17. C.J. Stroud, not a bad day. 2 touchdown passes. But Trevor Lawrence, this is something, I don't know if it was the Kansas City Chiefs effect, losing that game, and they overlooked the Houston Texans. I can't figure that one out. Hey, the Washington Commanders, undefeated no more. The Buffalo Bills just put on the whooping sticks, beating them 37-3 on the road. The Patriots beat the Jets. No surprise there, even though the Jets heard from Coach Robert Saleh that they're sticking with Zach Wilson. Okay. Cleveland Browns, no problem over the Tennessee Titans, 27-3. The Baltimore Colts beat the Ravens. The Indianapolis Colts beat the Baltimore Ravens in overtime, 22-19. I did that last show, by the way. And then you have the Chargers beating the Vikings 28-24. Vikings are 0-3. This was a team that made the playoffs last year. They're 0-3. Is Kirk Cousins done in Minnesota? You know, they got rid of Dalvin Cook. They just got Cam Akers with the trade with the Rams. By the way, the Rams play the Bengals tonight on Monday night as the doubleheader for Week 2. It's the rematch of the Super Bowl 2 years ago. And then I'm looking at the other scores. Right now, the Sunday night football game, the Steelers are beating the Raiders 16-7. I anticipate the Pittsburgh Steelers winning that game. So with the Baltimore Ravens losing, the Browns winning, if the Steelers win, they'll all be 2-1. The Bengals might be 0-3 after tonight because the Rams are a very good team. And so the NFL wrapping up Week 3. I'll preview Week 4 later on in this week. We just got so much sporting events to cover. A big shout out to the Columbus, Georgia Vipers. They were down at Spencer High yesterday in a big championship tournament. Fountain City FC was at Otis Spencer Stadium. They got their game simulcast, and it was televised. A big shout out to Brandon Schwobel. Did a great job. I watched the broadcast as they were in the Tri-City Latino Festival tournament. Fountain City FC is the outdoor soccer team in Columbus. Hey, NBA training camp is about a week away. We'll get into NBA preseason. I'll have my NBA preview show here on the broadcast. Now let's talk about the Atlanta Braves. The Braves split a 2-game series with the Washington Nationals. They are now 156. You know, they won 101 games last year. They're a great regular season team. They just got to turn it up in the postseason. The Braves split the doubleheader. They go into the final week taking on the Chicago Cubs. 2.5-game lead over the Baltimore Orioles. A 3.5-game lead over the Los Angeles Dodgers. Ronald Acuna Jr., congratulations. Only the 5th player in Major League Baseball history to hit 40 home runs and steal 40 bases. He is actually in the 40-60 club because he has 60 stolen bases. So the Dodgers did beat my Giants 3-2. Boy, the Giants just fell off a cliff toward the end of the season. The Dodgers are only 3.5 back of the Atlanta Braves. This is what the playoffs would look like if the season ended today. Right now, the Baltimore Orioles would be the overall number 1 seed. The number 2 seed would be the Texas Rangers, followed by the Minnesota Twins, who would be the number 3 seed. The number 4 seed, and this would be a very tough out as a number 4 seed, would be the Tampa Bay Rays. They're only 2.5 back from the Baltimore Orioles. And so you would also have the Toronto Blue Jays would be the number 5 seed. And then you got 2 teams still fighting for a playoff spot, the Houston Astros and then the Seattle Mariners, who are a half game behind the Houston Astros. Astros would get the 3 seed, or the 6 seed, they would play the 3 seed, the Minnesota Twins. Astros have just way too much firepower. They're the defending World Series champs. You never want to count out the champs. Astros win that game against the Minnesota Twins if they were playing. And then the Tampa Bay Rays and the Toronto Blue Jays. I think the Rays end up winning that game. And so that would leave, if you reseed, Houston would play Baltimore in the next round. Tampa Bay would play, so Houston taking on the Twins, and Tampa Bay would take on Texas. I think that the ALCS, when it's all said and done, is going to be Tampa Bay and Baltimore, although you can never count out the champs. But is it possible that the Baltimore Orioles make it to the World Series for the first time since 1983, since the Cal Ripken Jr. years? That would be great for Baltimore Orioles fans. I know that the city of Baltimore, I went up to school in the military up there. Baltimore is a very nice city. Just the harbor. The harbor is really the only safest area in Baltimore. I'm being honest. I actually did go to an Orioles game at Camden Yards, and I had a lot of fun. A lot of Orioles fans. When it comes to Baltimore, you have the Baltimore Ravens and the Orioles, and they are passionate fans. You also have the Washington Wizards, the Nationals, the D.C. area, Georgetown basketball, Navy football. You know, it's Maryland football. You know, the sporting events there are great. I just would like to see the Baltimore Orioles make it to the World Series. Over in the National League, the Braves would get the number 1 seed. The Dodgers would get the number 2 seed. The number 3 seed would be the Milwaukee Brewers. So this is where it gets interesting, because the number 4 seed would be the Phillies. The number 5 seed would be the Cubs. That would leave the Miami Marlins. The Phillies is the number 4 seed. The Diamondbacks are the 5 seed. The Cubs are the 6 seed. The Miami Marlins, the Reds, the Padres, and the Giants are still mathematically alive for the postseason. But let's say, okay, the Cubs are going to get it. So the Cubs would play the Brewers in the wild card round. The Phillies would play the Diamondbacks. If the Cubs get the upset against the Brewers, they're playing the Braves in the next round. But I got to tell you, I think that the Braves are going to end up playing the Phillies. It's going to be a rematch of the divisional round last year. And then the Braves' path to the World Series is going to be their 2 biggest inferior opponents, the Phillies and the Dodgers. It's just the way the baseball gods work. But I think that that's what's going to happen, that they're going to end up playing the Phillies. And then we get to see Bryce Harper, and if he goes off, if he has like a Ryan Zimmerman moment, you know, Bryce Harper has always been a Braves killer. I just would hate to see this matchup. I hope they play anybody else but the Phillies in that first round of the playoffs. Maybe the Diamondbacks. That would be a great matchup for the Braves in the playoffs. Well, we really had a fun show. Don't forget that Tuesday night, starting at 7, it is the Georgia-Alabama Sports Live scoreboard show, where Thrift Behringer and I We'll be breaking down all the scores in high school football, college football, the NFL. You don't want to miss it. It will be Tuesday night. Tomorrow on the show, I'm going to have Gabe Reynolds. He is a Cowboys fan and an Alabama fan, and I know that he has got a lot to say about the Dallas Cowboys and what happened to them against the Arizona Cardinals. Alabama, it seems like all is well with the world. They're back on track. Nick Saban just proved that he is still the best coach in college football, even though Kirby Smart is right behind him. And we also will preview all the week of sports leading up. It is going to be so much fun. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. I hope everybody has a great rest of your night, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.